you say. Alas, my friend, the boast is poor. He who is mingled in the fray of duty that the brave endure must have made foes. You've never turned the wrong to right. You've been a coward in the fight.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sublime Primetime 2021 Drama Series panel, where we are celebrating those writers nominated for the Emmy for Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series. Today's event is co-presented by the Writers Guild Foundation and the Writers Guild of America West in partnership with Final Draft and Variety. All ticket proceeds go toward keeping the foundation library and their community outreach programs going through the pandemic. So thank you for your support. I'm Glen Mazzara, writer showrunner. I've served on the WGA board of directors, and I'm the co-chair of our inclusion and equity group. I'll be your moderator today. I'm also joined by Carrie Aiken, our American Sign Language interpreter. So our group of nominees today is truly outstanding. If you haven't watched these episodes, you have to. Each one is a masterclass in writing, acting, directing, really extraordinary work. Before we meet our panelists, let's take a look at the work that's earned them their Emmy nominations for outstanding writing for a drama series. Okay, great. First, I would like to introduce Stephen J. Canal. Stephen, you're a legendary TV producer whose first credit was in 1971, writing for Ironside. You wrote for Adam 12 and Columbo before going on to create such classics as Beretta, Rockford Files, Greatest American Hero, A-Team, and 21 Jump Street, and many others. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, wait, what? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm seeing that this is a mistake here. This is Stephen Canals, who is the Emmy-nominated and Peabody Award-winning co-creator, executive producer, director, and writer of the FX drama series Pose. Stephen's work on Pose has received the Peabody, the AFI Award for a TV Program of the Year, plus Emmy, Golden Globe, and Critics' Choice Award nominations for Best Drama Series. He's also received nominations from the Writers Guild Awards for Outstanding New Series and the Imaging Awards for Best Director for Television. He's also the winner of the GLAAD Media Award for Outstanding Drama Series, the 2020 Final Draft Awards, New Voice Award for TV, and the Point Foundation's Horizon Award, which recognizes a trailblazer who has taken a leadership role as an advocate of the LGBTQ community. He's also been featured on the cover of Hollywood Reporter's Pride issue and named to their list of 2020's 50 most powerful LGBTQ players in Hollywood. Stephen, it's great to have you. Thank you
for having me.
Our Lady J is a writer, producer, and advocate who is a trailblazer in her own right. She was the first trans writer to be hired in a TV writer's room, writing and producing on the Golden Globe and Emmy-winning series Transparent. She's currently a writer and a co-executive producer on Pose. She's also a singer-songwriter in both pop and classical worlds, who's worked with Sia, the American Ballet Theater, Mark Morris Dance Group, and more. She's a classically trained pianist and holds the honor of being the first out trans woman to perform at Carnegie Hall. In 2013, she released her first studio album, Picture of a Man. She has been awarded 2 Peabody Awards for her work on Transparent and Pose, and has been nominated for 3 Writers Guild Awards and an NAACP Image Award. And thank you for joining us. And Lady J and Stephen share the nomination for the Pose series finale with Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, and Janet Mock. Okay, so thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Yahlin Chang is an executive producer and writer for The Handmaid's Tale. She won the Humanitas Prize for Drama Teleplay in 2020 and has also been nominated for multiple Emmys, Writers Guild Awards, and Producers Guild Awards. Her credits include ER, Supergirl, Dirty Sexy Money, Shades of Blue, Pan Am, Pure Genius, and Ed. In May 2019, she received an honorary doctorate from Brunel University and delivered their commencement address. She graduated from Yale, after which she spent 6 years working as a writer, reporter, and cultural critic for Newsweek. And Yahlin is nominated for the Handmaid's Tale episode Home. Yahlin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Misha Green is showrunner, writer, executive producer, and director of HBO Lovecraft Country, which is also executive produced by Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams. It's based on the novel by Matt Ruff. On the film side, she's the writer and producer of The Mother, which sold in a competitive situation to Netflix, and will star Jennifer Lopez with Nikki Caro directing. She is also adapting and set to direct the sequel to Tomb Raider for MGM. She's producing Warner Brothers' Cleopatra Jones and producing an adaptation of The Gilded Ones with Make Ready. Prior to Lovecraft Country, Misha was co-creator, EP, and writer on the series Underground. That show was honored with 4 NAACP Image Award nominations, including Outstanding Drama Series. And additionally, the African American Film Critics Association named Underground as the best cable new media TV show of 2016. The series was nominated for a TCA award for Outstanding New Program. And Misha is nominated for Lovecraft Country Sundown. And Rebecca Sonnenshine is a writer and producer who won a Nickel Fellowship. Her feature film writing credits include Happily Ever After, American Zombie, The Haunting of Molly Hartley, and The Keeping Hours, which won the Audience Award at the 2017 LA Film Festival. For TV, she has written for Vampire Diaries, Outcast, The Crossing, and The Boys for Amazon. She's currently EP and showrunner for the upcoming Netflix series Archive 81. And Rebecca is nominated for The Boys, What I Know. Rebecca, thanks for joining us. So first of all, welcome everyone. And my first question is, what the fuck is wrong with you? There's a pandemic. We have almost 600 writers watching this. Most of them have been walking around in the house in sweatpants for 18 months. And you guys are overachievers. So I want to thank you all for making us look bad. That's fantastic. Thank you. I also want to mention that that we have 3 other nominees who are not here right now, couldn't join us. Dave Filoni was nominated for The Mandalorian, Chapter 13, The Jedi. Jon Favreau was nominated for The Mandalorian, Chapter 16, The Rescue. And Peter Morgan is nominated for The Crown, Episode War. And because Dave, John, and Peter were not able to join us today, everyone involved with this panel hopes that they lose. So my first question for the group is, who is going to win this award? It's very exciting. Does anybody want to go out and make a prediction? It's an open question to everyone. Who do you think is going to win? Does anybody want to take a guess? Nobody wants to touch it. Okay, we're off to a good start. I'm going to say this. I actually looked up the odds in Vegas, and they have odds for the Emmys. I didn't know this, but they have odds for the best drama, best comedy, all of the acting awards, best reality competition, best variety sketch show, nothing for writers. Okay, nobody cares about writers except for Final Draft and Variety over here. See, okay, so anyway, good luck to all of you, because the work that I've watched all of these episodes, really extraordinary, beautifully done. And I think what struck me about this particular collection of nominated episodes is that the shows have fresh perspectives. They challenge what we know. They challenge the patriarchy. They challenge white supremacy. They're all political. They all deal with issues of power. And so I'd like to just ask each of you, is that something that it must be something you set out to explore. It's right there on the screen. What were you going for? What was your intent? And when you went after these kind of themes, and what did you hope to say? So I'll open that to, anybody who would like to answer that, please.
Well, I think for us on Pose, for sure, I'll say that the show was always conceived as a love letter to the ballroom community, to queer and trans folks, to my beloved city of New York, and certainly to myself, as a queer Afro Puerto Rican person who never saw myself on television when I was growing up. And then I think beyond that, obviously our show, as you said, tackles some really heady and important political discourse. This last season, specifically around HIV/AIDS, which felt all the more urgent because we're in the midst of another global pandemic. And so I think that more than anything, it was just important to put a message out into the world that let folks know who hold those identities that you're important, that your voice matters, that you deserve to take up space unapologetically. And I think that it doesn't just permeate this one episode. I think that was the ethos of the entire series.
Mhm. Lady J, would you agree with that? And what were your thoughts on writing Pose?
Absolutely. Well, I think as a trans writer, if I didn't fight oppression, I would never work. It's not just part of the content that I create, but it's how I approach scripts, and it's how I approach my life when I leave the door. I am, 6'2" and visibly trans. And so it's not like I can just hide away. Fighting oppression has indeed created who I am as an artist. And I wouldn't be able to separate that fight from my voice.
Mhm.
And I was happy to contribute that to Pose along with Stephen.
And Misha?
I've just gotten caught up in everybody's beautiful faces that I kind of forgot the question. What are we?
Well, you clearly, this is a show, Lovecraft Country is a show that is, dealing with racial issues, but also from a horror perspective. So it's not, hard to make the case that a lot of people's experience are close to horror, and so, but there is very much I think in the show that this is telling a particular story and examining, I mean, the issues of Jim Crow, the issues of the sundown towns, all of that. It's a very political show in a way, even though that's couch, it's got fun monsters and the terror and all of that. So what was your approach to that material?
I think my approach to the material is everything we do is political, even though it's like a comedy or something. You're telling a story. The basis of a story is a thesis. I believe the world should be more like this, or I'm exploring this story to get to a conclusion about this. So I feel like going into it, that was maybe the least interesting part to me, because that stuff coming from underground, it was like that was all in a world built around enslaved people. So it was very much the DNA of this country, which is built on racism, was already up here. So I feel like when I got to Lovecraft Country, I was just really excited to see how to explore that through the metaphor of monsters and genre, which is horror is my favorite. So I'm ready to dive into how to bring those things together. And it's actually not very hard, because being a Black person in America is like living in a horror story. And like things like sundown towns, I'm like, I can't even make this up. Like there are towns you can't be Black in after dark. If I pitch that as a TV show or a movie, people will be like, I mean, is that a little unrealistic though? And I'm like, but that's our history. So it's just about going back and mining that and stepping into it, I feel like, and not being afraid to go there, because it's messy. It's all very, very messy.
And Rebecca, what were your thoughts? I mean, obviously I felt like this was a very, sort of dystopian, corporate run alternate universe, and so to me there was a political bent. What were your thoughts when you were writing? Were you trying to get to something on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole show is very much a political satire. It's about capitalism, the way we let corporations sort of run our run our policy. It's also about sort of celebrity culture and the way that we worship personality, whether it's political, whether in our show everything kind of gets mixed up. You know, we feature a corporation that is also involved in sort of national defense. So sort of there's a crossover with the idea of who enforces the law and how do they do it. It's all pretty late stage capitalism examination. So we like to take our digs at everyone. I think if we're an equal opportunity, we're just sort of holding a spotlight up to both sides, to be honest, you know, for progressive, for conservative. So it's kind of intense for a superhero show, but I'm just reading constant political, you know, material all the time, newspapers, blogs. It's heady, so depressing.
Yahlin, I mean, when Handmaids came out, you know, it felt, you know, it really struck a chord. I mean, we all remember the early marches against, you know, Trump's presidency and people wearing the pussy hats and you know, the obviously the costumes, you know, it was a very political show. You know, 4 years later, though, you know, Trump's out of office. You know, we have Biden. Supposedly everything's cured, probably not. But, you know, why is Handmaid? Because Handmaid is such a, you know, it's not a satire. It's a hard hitting thing, and especially, you know, with this particular episode about a woman who has just left this traumatic thing, and when we see, you know, people in Afghanistan, you know, at the airport and all of that, it's still incredibly relevant. You know, why do you think that the show remains so, you know, does it resonate so much, that it remains so relevant?
Well, I think because, you know, misogyny and oppression of women still continues to be an incredibly, you know, relevant problem in our world. And I think what's sort of sad actually about working on The Handmaid's Tale is that we do all this research about the condition of women around the world, and 90% of what we research, because there's nothing on the show that hasn't happened to women somewhere around the world or in history, like isn't currently happening or has happened, you know, so everything is real. And honestly, the vast majority of what we research, we can't put on the show. Like, we cannot put on TV because it is so dark and it is so terrible.
What would be an example of something that's too dark? Can you
well, there's, you know,
something? I mean, if you're comfortable discussing it.
Well, I mean, there are specific ways that women get tortured and, you know, gang raped as a weapon of war. I mean, you only have to look at what happens not only to women and girls under the Taliban in Afghanistan, but you know, how ISIS treats women, what happens to the Yazidi women, Uyghurs in China, you know, women in Yemen and Congo, and it's still happening. And so, like, I would, you know, I think you should look that up. Honestly, it's like we can't really talk about it in this forum, but again, it's, you know, it's all real. And you know, I think the thing about the show is that these atrocities that happen to women in our show are happening to, like, white, blonde, blue-eyed American women. So we're not used to seeing that, you know. We're not used to seeing Americans, like in our show, treated as like refugees and trying to get the hell out of Gilead and trying to get to Canada. And so I think in a way, this is, the stories really hit home and are made relatable in a way that hopefully opens people's eyes to what happens to women all around the world, you know, that can maybe be a little bit less relatable if they're happening to Black, brown, or Asian women. You know, but yes, I mean, I guess the show is inherently political. I mean, Margaret Atwood, wrote the novel in the 80s, and unfortunately, you would think that we've progressed so much since then, and in some ways we have, and in some ways we, clearly didn't when we elected a sexual predator as president. And Bruce Miller's, my boss, has, brilliantly made the decision to put the book on the screen, and what we are guided by more than anything is to be sort of as realistic and to adhere to the facts as much as possible in this work of speculative fiction. More than anything, we just ask the question in our writers' room of what would really happen, and what do people in totalitarian societies, how do they really act? And we're really led by the truth in that way.
Well, I certainly saw that, I mean, if people haven't seen this particular episode, this is about her return, Elizabeth Moss's character return home. And I felt that it had a surreal quality. You could really understand that this was a victim of war and war crimes returning to a society, and the light seemed very bright, and didn't the supermarket seem silly at some point, and it all seemed so frivolous when somebody's really going. So did you have consultants you must have that talked about trauma and how people really recover for trauma? I felt like that character, it was a beautiful story about that really recovering from that trauma. So I could see the research there, and I imagine you did have consultants and to handle that particular part of the show.
Yes, I mean, we have a brilliant UN consultant named Andy Gatow, and she's always, bringing in more experts in trauma and in, international, politics. And so in that way, so this particular episode was really about what happens when all her dreams come true. It's sort of the fairy tale ending, and we had to really change the show radically because suddenly she's out of Gilead. So what happens when you get your fairy tale ending, but you continue to be incredibly traumatized? She feels like an alien walking around on this planet. People are asking her what she wants, if she wants, what she wants to eat. Like even that, she can make these choices, and going to the supermarket and all the words, because in Gilead, she's not allowed to read, and obviously there are a lot of places around the globe where girls aren't allowed to be educated, and so, but I think that, the show hits a chord because everybody has some trauma, and that trauma can just, it just stays with you. So one of the things that the UN consultant told us was that because June, our character, is sort of a VIP refugee, she would be debriefed, she'd be brought to like a really nice place, like a nice hotel to get debriefed. And so that adds to this whole crazy fairy tale ending where she's suddenly in this beautiful hotel, and she feels terrible because the other thing that's common to a lot of trauma survivors is that she's filled with guilt and shame and self-hatred, and given what she had to do when she was in Gilead, and just leaving the people behind, and so that trauma, even though she's out, it really stays with you. And I think that is definitely a universal feature of human experience, that everybody has some trauma, and it is, a struggle throughout your life to move beyond it.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful episode. Stephen and Lady J, I'd like to talk to you about the research that you did. Okay, what was interesting to me was, I worked at St. Vincent's Hospital in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. I was a clerk there. My father was a doctor. My wife was very involved in the gay men's health crisis. So it was an incredibly powerful episode for me. Okay, and you did a beautiful job of kind of teaching the audience, but not making it didactic. It was a tough line. What was I do want to ask though, that it felt like at one point, Blanca's character gets a fancy job at St. Vincent's, and St. Vincent's was not fancy. Were you guys taking a dig at St. Vincent's at my old place, or what was it? Where did that come from? What was that about?
I was a patient at St. Vincent's. I was a patient at St. Vincent's. I have been positive for almost 20 years. And a lot of my experience with the medical system treated less than, not being able to access proper medical care because of my transness, was a basis for story in the show, along with the history of our community. I feel like we didn't have to do much research outside of our lives because we truly lived the lives of the characters on this show. Of course, there were other areas where we researched. I am 43, so I was not the same age as these characters. I'm about 10 years younger than the characters, but I was old enough to remember what that life was like. And with GMHC as well, one of the final scenes with Blanca takes place at GMHC. And that was partially based on my own experience with them. I sought out social workers and counselors to be able to access my health care, and they were instrumental in making sure that I survived this pandemic.
It's a tremendous episode. I mean, I was in tears several times. So that was just a beautifully done episode. Let me ask Misha, because one of the things that I also noticed about this group of scripts is that they all that if you look at the package, you all had things that you had to tackle because of where this script fell in the season. Okay, so Misha has a pilot. Okay, Yahlin had episode 7. Rebecca had a season finale, and Stephen and Lady J had a series finale. So the function. So you all had particular issues that you had to hit, whether setting something up or wrapping something else up or whatever. So Misha, there's this episode is so packed. Okay, you have characters, you have horror, you have like a mystery, what's going on. You have the monsters, you have this crazy opening. There's so much going on. And yet the scene that struck out for me is where Atticus has to say, "Pretty please, can I make the U-turn?" Okay, like that just broke my heart, to see that guy emasculated. What's that?
Yes.
Say that again?
Not quite how he says it, but yes.
I'm going to say it that way. I'm not going to say, you're free to say, I'm not going to quote it. But what did you, what was your process in writing this pilot? And what did you feel, did everything come in layers? Or did you say, I absolutely have to have this up front? Like, this must have been a challenging script to write.
No, Matt Ruff had done so well in that book that he platformed those characters. It's a story of a person coming back home. So that gives you immediately the beats that are supposed to be in there. And then you have to set up some mystery for the rest of the season, even if that mystery gets solved in episode 2. So I feel like it just, because Matt's book was so well written, it was just really about picking the pieces. And in the book, the sundown chase, which was this, I was just blown away by this idea of like a slow chase. You can't go over the speed limit. They're following you. The sun's going down. It's like that scene writes itself. So I feel like that in the book had been just a story, a passing story one of the characters had told Uncle George. And I was like, of course we have to make that an actual scene. We have to see them go through that. And I then think from that kind of thing, the metaphor built itself. Vampires. Oh, right. Sundown. You can't be there. Monsters. What's our versions of vampires that's mixed with a little H.P. Lovecraft? So I think it unfolded that way, just from the book and using all the great stuff that was in the book, and then being like, okay, well, now we have to make it an hour. And then we have to add on to it what we want to do, because the book is a beautiful thing, but it's a platform. So we have to go to the next level. It's a TV show. What is that? And I think that it was just fun to have that scope of going, I love to eat story, as I say. So I like to go, go, go. So to be able to have this kind of whole road trip adventure in one episode is a luxury, but not when you have a bigger budget.
Yahlin, you mentioned that this episode was different because I guess this was the first one in which she was out of Gilead, right? So in a way, it's it's a reset for the show, if you will, or whatever. I wasn't familiar with the entire season, so I didn't know that. So what was important to you for that? Just, to capture those common or mundane daily moments, like you were saying, and what else did you really need to kind of, what was the challenge about writing this episode?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I loved when we started conceiving of this season was that Bruce Miller, my boss who created the show, had this great idea, which was to do something that is always in the season, that you imagine would be in a series finale or a season finale, which is finally she gets out of Gilead, our main character, who we've cared about, and like the whole show is from her point of view. The idea is not only does she get out, but she gets out randomly in the middle of season 4, so it's completely unexpected. And I think that that's part of what keeps our viewers sort of discombobulated, is that the rhythms are, it's a very unnatural rhythm. Like, why would you in a 10 episode season have her get out in season 6 and then have season 7 essentially be launching into like a new world, the world of Canada, the world of the refugee community in Little America, and we did it because that was the time for the story to go there, that was, and so I wanted to mix both sort of this, what happens when you get your fairy tale ending, with what would actually happen to her, this person who is burdened with all this guilt because she left her daughter back in Gilead and she had always stayed in order to get her out. And so she failed. So she comes out and she feels more than anything that she has failed her child. And, she finally gets reunited with her husband, but her husband has the same thing, and so he has to apologize to her. He ends up, finally apologizing to her and saying what he's been wanting to say for the 7 years that he didn't see her, which is, I'm so sorry I didn't get you out. I tried every day and I failed. And so I think, one of the things that we talk about a lot in our room too, is that our show lives in the interstitial moments, like these huge momentous things happen. The stakes are sort of big on a grand scale because we're in this alternate sort of United States, Gilead place. But, but it's sort of like what happens between those big TV moments. Like what are I think Bruce has said, it's like what happens in the montage. Like usually in shows when you see the montage, like the couple's gotten together and, there's a montage of them falling in love or montage, our show just goes into the montage and slows it down. So it's like, okay, so what are they going to talk about now? It's like the last scene of The Graduate. Okay, now what? Now what's going to happen? So that's one of our sort of narrative guiding lights.
And Rebecca, you wrote the season finale. So this thing moves like a freight train. You've got, it's so well plotted and everything is just twisting, and yet you take your time with the character moments. The scene from the clip package, where Billy Butcher is saying, let me do this thing or whatever. It was just the heartbreak and really great character moments, and yet it just moves on. So, does the rest of the season suck and just all the good stuff ended up in your episode, or you just had so much story, and what were your thoughts about writing this finale?
Well, I would say subjectively that the rest of the season didn't suck. I'm
teasing, of course. Yeah.
It's in a serialized show with a large cast. Everybody who writes for a show like that knows that you start out at the beginning of the season and you want to get everybody to a certain place. You have character arcs that you need to complete, and you have plot arcs that you need to complete. So the season finale is always like you've got a laundry list of things that you need to execute. So we had a lot of things we needed to accomplish in that season in the episode for a lot of characters. I think what we try to do as a show is, obviously we have all this crazy plot and these big set pieces. But the thing that makes it, sort of relatable, and I feel like even if people think they like it for the fighting, they actually like it for the character moments. And so we have a lot of big emotional stories that are coming to a head in an episode like this, and like grounding our characters, the bad guys and the good guys, even though the line is always crossed in our show, who is whom. That's sort of what we're always aiming for, is that we're trying to get to these very crystallized emotional decisions and moments, and hopefully like heartbreak and also a good fight. So that's kind of where we ended up. We had a lot of, we had a something that we planted in episode 2, which is like the girls get it done, which was sort of a commentary on corporate America and sort of the capitalizing on a good thing and making it commercial. Is that we wanted to really end it with something in which these women were fighting in a way that is not glamorous, but they're getting shit done. So
it was a fun scene. Yeah.
It's really fun a show like this, you have to consider the big fight pieces, and you have to consider those, like the Butcher and the Becca scene is one of my favorites, because that's the arc of their love story, from the whole season, and everything is coming to, a conclusion. So it's really fun.
Let me ask this, and I'm going to spoil the episode, but if people, but at the end, Homelander, right, like is on a rooftop, and he's yelling at the city, I can do anything, and then you pull back and he's nude and he's masturbating on the rooftop over a city. So my question is, was this in the comic book, or is this something that Eric Kripke really did when the show became a big hit?
I don't know if it was actually in the comic book. It could have been. It seems like something that could have been in the comic book.
Fair enough.
But it was shot last year. Actually, it was shot the previous season. That was sort of a late addition to this episode. I would say that's an Eric addition to this episode. Okay. It was shot in the first season.
Great. And Stephen and Lady J, you had the series finale. So this is, you're kind of looking at the legacy of the show, and this show will have quite the legacy. How hard was it to say goodbye to these characters and this story, and what was that process like for you?
It was exhausting. I mean, it was truly, because I've talked about this quite a few times, but the original idea, the kernel of an idea proposed came to me in 2004. I wrote the first draft of the pilot in 2014, sold it to Ryan Murphy and FX in 2016. And then our first season aired in 2018. So it was just been a very long journey. So to say goodbye to these characters who have sort of been living in my head for so long, was tough. It was hard, but it felt like a graduation. Like I was ready to sort of allow them, it's very writerly, but to allow them to kind of go off and live their lives, which in our finale you see that when Blanca walks off up that street in New York, into the night, it's like she's okay. She's going to live a long, healthy, happy life, and she's going to do great things. And so, I'll miss her, but it's nice to sort of release her and, let her go off into the world and live her life and do all the great things that she's going to do.
You also directed the finale, and you have an Emmy nomination for directing. If you could only win one, which would you rather win, the writing or the directing?
I would be happy to have an Emmy in my hand in any category.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, good. I'm okay. The easy answer was writers, because it's a Writers Guild event, but okay, it was kind of a softball. But anyway,
well, there are folks who do both. Misha is also a director, so it's both are equally tough and take up a lot of.
I would love you to win in the directing category. That way it could be open for someone else to win. I don't know, me maybe for this. No, I'm kidding.
Or me for writing as well. I'm just going to pitch myself as a winner.
Can we tie? Can we just tie?
Yeah,
with any of these episodes, you know, were there major changes that happened once things started shooting? You know, major script changes where the script shot off in a different direction, whether it was difficult to shoot because of COVID or you know, I mean, many of the actors are also nominated, and you know, totally committed to the characters and beautiful performances. And I would imagine that there's a collaboration there. So does anyone have, you know, something about the process, you know, once it left your computer and went into the process, what was that like for people?
Like not much changed on post for the final episode because it was the final episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we could improvise and pivot to tell another story. So it felt like it was complete, and also just rushing to get to that final episode, you know, all the work that it took to get there. We were happy to hit the end of series at the very bottom of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it took a lot of, the finale took a lot of trust from both the studio and the network, because you know, you've seen the episode, and you know, we have several really big protest scenes. There's an act up scene as well. So we had,
Yeah,
I was directing scenes where there was supposed to be, you know, 250 to 300 people. And the most, because of COVID, the background actors that we could get approved by the studio was 40, you know, so it required a lot of VFX work. But it felt, you know, as Jay talked about earlier in talking about her personal experience, if the story felt really critically important to all of us. And so it didn't feel like there was an option to go back and make those changes. And so we just had to make it work.
You know what, you did a great job with that. I because that's one of the questions that, you know, I want to know, did you use any actual footage of act up protest? Because this, you know, we all know what happens, and you're talking about COVID, but you know, sometimes on a TV budget or whatever, you know, you end up with like, you know, the prom has 4 people at it or something like that.
Yeah.
And this really felt like, I mean, you had the beautiful shot of you know, the 2 groups coming down the street and hooking up, and it really looked impressive. It felt like you were there, and so I did not get that, you know, TV cut in corners or whatever. I mean, really well done. Congratulations.
And that's a credit to I'm gonna ruin his last name, but my dear friend Brian, who is I call him Brian VFX, and it's the same team that worked on When They See Us with Ava, but they came in and they were really wonderful and helped us to you know, I do practical effects in camera, but also do VFX work and, you know, and populate these scenes so that 40 people looked like 250.
Yeah,
and that was yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'm just agreeing.
I was just gonna say it was a large collaboration between, you know, our VFX, obviously, my DP Andre, and then Anna Lucia McGordy, who is the head of our costume department, who, you know, in those scenes managed to take 40 people and change their costumes 3, sometimes 4 times, so that, you know, it would look like 250 very different and distinct people.
Right.
So it was a lot of work, but
yeah, it paid off. Yahlin, Rebecca, and Misha, were there major changes once things started shooting with your episodes?
Well, we started shooting for 2 weeks this season, and then we had to shut down for several months when COVID hit. And then when we came back up again, we were shooting in Toronto, and the rules did keep changing. So suddenly there was a rule, like it was really, it really affected actually the episode right before this episode 6, but I had to do a huge production rewrite because we, you know, like I had written the scene for like 150 extras, And then Canada came down with a rule that you could only have 10 people on camera. And so there's, so instead of, June being like sort of in this, medical tent and, getting AIDS, suddenly she was just in a truck, and she reunited with her friend in a truck, and we had 10 people in the truck, and it actually ended up working great. That was, so that was a big thing. The other issue was just, actors, getting our actors in. So we had to just cut some scenes and change stories because, we couldn't necessarily fly people up, or they wouldn't, they'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks. It just wouldn't, wasn't happening. But for episode 7, the nominated episode, we did have to delete some scenes, but the rest of the episode really stayed intact. Thankfully, it was always kind of a small episode. It was always more of an intimate episode. It didn't have like these massive crowd scenes like the episode before it.
And Misha and Becca?
We shot pre-COVID.
Okay.
So that didn't affect us. And I think for some of the reasons I said, like, there's all these things that have to happen in the season finale, that like location changes, and which necessitate a little bit of script change, but mostly it went through as written.
Okay. And Misha?
Script changes. Yes, I think we got to like the cherry draft. I don't think it actually changed though. It was more so we reshot a couple of scenes. We shot a couple of scenes over the course of the series as opposed to when we had shot the pilot. So it wasn't necessarily that the script was changing. It's just that we're shooting it in different elements at different times, which was really interesting because I've never had the joy or the privilege of doing that. So it was very cool to be able to be like, oh no, we don't have to try to squish this into shooting this in the pilot and then we got to move it because we couldn't find a location. We got to wait during the series and be like, no, we found the location now let's shoot that for the pilot.
Great. Okay, I don't see any questions. If people have questions, you could send them in. But let me ask, and we're going to wrap up pretty much, unless somebody has a great question. But let me ask each of you. We all know, I hope you all win. You're all more than deserving and really beautiful, impressive work. Let's say you do win and you're nervous, you're excited. We all hear these horror stories. Oh, I forgot to thank so-and-so, and I can't believe that. So each of you, who do you really want to thank? Who's the one person in your life that you need to thank for helping you on your journey to get to where you are right now? So I just want to give you each a moment to just give a shout out to somebody who's important to you. Misha, you're on screen, so you can go first.
My parents. I think that's the one. I won't forget to thank them though. So.
Okay.
But that's who I would thank in this moment. They're the people that have always supported me. So.
Okay. Lady J?
I'd say my parents as well, my chosen family on top of that, and also my team of doctors, lawyers, psychiatrists, and plastic surgeons who got me here.
Okay, great. Yahlin?
It would definitely be my husband, Ryan, who is an inspiration to me, who's always trying to fix the world in different ways, who's been, incredibly supportive of my career from moving to LA, which he never wanted to do. So yeah, without a doubt him. And then, my 3 kids, they're 15, 12, and 10. I won't forget them though, because they take up a lot of space in my head.
Okay, and Rebecca?
I don't think I'm going to forget to thank my mom. But I think I'm afraid that I would get nervous, but I actually need to thank the other writers, because, a season finale is like built on the backs of all the other scripts. So obviously it wouldn't exist without all of them. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And Stephen?
Yeah, I think like everyone, for sure, my parents, and I would never forget to thank them. I think I suppose in the excitement of potentially winning, the only thing I could think of that I might forget, and this would be important to remember to say this, is you know, that for folks like Jay and I, who come from a long, you know, history of queer and trans people who have fought for our liberation so that we could be, you know, creators and writers and producers on a show like Pose, that it would be really important to say thank you to all of our forebears and ancestors who like walked really long roads and fought really hard so that we could have the visibility that we have today.
Okay, great. All right, well, I think that's a great way to end this. It's coming up on 5, so we'll say that's a wrap. I want to thank our panelists. I hope you guys had fun. Good luck at the Emmys on September 19th. You all deserve to win, like I said. I also do want to thank you for your incredible work. It's a tough business, and to see such talented artists out there telling beautiful stories that are heartfelt, meaningful, that help us see things in a new way, it's inspiring for all of us. So you lift us all up. So I want to thank you for that work. I want to thank Carrie for being our interpreter. So thank you very much. I want to thank the folks who sponsored this event, the Writers Guild Foundation, WGA West, their partners at Final Draft and Variety. Their support of writers means a lot to us. I also want to thank the audience. Again, your support of buying tickets allows the foundation to do what they do. That keeps the library open, keeps the community outreach programs running. So that makes a difference. I hope you all had fun. Enjoy your evening, everyone. Thank you and stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.